Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and a lot of you saw this week that President Obama or the Obama administration earmarked a decent amount of money, about $12 million, to survivors of the Nazi Holocaust. And this is not the first time that they've actually gotten money. They've actually gotten paid around the world billions of dollars for their suffering. So the natural question, obviously, is what about black people? And so to dig into this, I reached out to my homegirl, my partner in crime from BreakingBrown.com, Miss Yvette Carnell. How you doing today, Yvette?
Doing good. How about you?
I'm doing really well, really well. And so you're not happy about this, or right? I mean, how do you feel? I think I know what your reaction to some of this is. I think you know what my reaction is, but I want to hear your reaction. So tell me what you think about all of
I
this.
mean, I put the article up on Breaking Brown because I found it actually at the Times of Israel yesterday, and it wasn't the earmarking of those dollars wasn't really reported in mainstream news. I went to the Times of Israel, and then I went to the Jewish Federation, which released a press release about the release of the $12 million that are earmarked over 5 years to be paid out to survivors of the Holocaust. And the head of this organization basically said that these people deserve to die with dignity. And a quarter of them are living, below the poverty line. So the first thing that struck out in my mind is that the poorest people in America are African Americans, African Americans, right? Almost half of, I saw statistics, almost half African American kids exist in impoverished areas. That's how they grow up. But the funniest thing is nobody is trying to make sure that we live with dignity. And even if you look at like specific incidents, right? If you look at Tulsa, if you look at Black Wall Street, if you look at Tulsa, you look at these people had their wealth destroyed, ripped away from them by white mobs. Those people are we still have survivors from Black Wall Street, who are still alive. And those people haven't received any compensation from the first black president, no less, because this was a push by Joe Biden to kind of make this happen. So vice president. So my thing is, why is it okay? You look at it, and Native Americans have received payments in this country. You look at it, it's just like everybody's getting a check except for African Americans. And even when you look at the Holocaust survivors, the other thing that struck me is the Holocaust is not an American tragedy. The Holocaust is a German atrocity, a German genocide. And the Germans have, apparently paid Holocaust survivors. But my whole thing is, what about black people? I mean, it's not funny, but you have to laugh because it's just so insane.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. Maria Lloyd is actually working on a film about reparations right now, and you're actually in the film, and I did a little part in it, and it's interesting because when you just think about just the sheer absurdity that our government, that we have a government that we show compassion, so much compassion for Nazi Holocaust survivors, and just have just almost complete ignorance of the Holocaust of slavery, which was much longer and much more widespread, much more damaging. It's really insulting in a way. I mean, you talk about a quarter of these survivors of the Jewish Holocaust or the Nazi Holocaust being in poverty. Well, 27.4% of black people are in poverty. All black people. This is according to the National Poverty Center. So, you know, what? What's going on here? I mean, it's interesting that um, typically when white people are talking about another white person, things like letting them die in dignity become important, right? For us, I think that there is sort of a fundamental underlying belief that we don't deserve dignity, that we should just be happy that we're not dead and we're not enslaved, that we're not incarcerated. If you really want to talk about reparations, I mean, from a very real standpoint, there are at least three broad scenarios or three broad events that have occurred for which we deserve reparations. One is obviously slavery. Two is Jim Crow and the mistreatment and marginalization and lynching terrorism that we experienced during the Jim Crow era. And third is mass incarceration, where our families were obliterated by this Holocaust of a prison industrial complex that was giving 50, 80, 100, 200-year sentences for very petty drug crimes. If they did that to white people, they'd be screaming bloody murder. If they did that to Jews, they'd be paying billions in reparations for this. This is far worse. The mass incarceration epidemic alone did far more damage than anything Adolf Hitler ever did in his short life, or in the amount of time that he had power. So, I think that we should just take conversation, realize that through the actions of your government, they're showing you very clearly they don't care about you. They're pretty much saying "fuck you" at every turn. They don't respect you. They don't care about your children. They don't believe you're worthy of dignity. They have no interest in ever even apologizing for what's been done, let alone actually compensating our community for that. When you start with that fundamental premise and understand that this is not an American melting pot, integration did not work, we are not a part of this country, we are not considered to be human beings, then that allows us to at least begin the process of building what we need in order to survive in this very hostile environment. The last thing I'll say on this, and I'll let you get back. I'll let you say the next thing, of course, because I didn't mean to say so much. But I think that on the reparations conversation in general, one thing I don't want to have is I don't want to have a bullshit conversation about reparations. I don't want you talking to me about the tiny little symbolic gestures that people can take to somehow say, oh yeah, well, slavery was bad and now it's over, and you should be happy that we're not going to do it again, right? A rapist and a murderer cannot go to court and say, how about we just let the past be the past and pretend like it never happened? That ain't gonna work. So if we're gonna have a conversation about reparations, I don't want it to be a frustrating conversation in the sense of people denying history, rewriting history, acting like we are so subhuman that we should simply be happy to get whatever we get. And that's the problem. I think the conversation has to occur at a point where we've all agreed that black people are human beings. If we can get to that point, then at least we can get to a conversation. We can get to a point where we can discuss this in a way where people respect the suffering that we've gone through. And I think that we haven't gotten to that point yet. What do you think?
Well, I think it's very interesting. I think one of the reasons that we haven't gotten to that point is that there are black people too who haven't had serious conversations. I remember, people being very excited that Bill Clinton has sort of apologized about slavery or whatever. We put up an article this morning at Your Black World where there's this guy who, in South Africa, who tortured black people and tried to assassinate leaders of an anti-apartheid regime, and he is going around town now washing the feet of black people and doing things to try to make amends. And my whole point with that is the reason that he can do that is because he never went to jail for his crimes, because he was part of the Truth and Reconciliation hearing and he apologized. I think the broader theme here is that black people have to overcome this allegiance to symbolism. An apology means nothing. An apology doesn't give you back what was taken from you, but that has systematically worked in terms of getting black people to be okay, in terms of, oh well, they're sorry, that happened, and that's so awful. And no, these were dollars, these were cents, this was actual wealth that was extracted. Whether it's here, whether it was South Africa, these were dollars. These were lives, and you have to, and all we have to make up for that now are dollars and cents. So that's what we have to work with. I don't care about the affection. I'm not even a person who cares whether this person or that person likes me or whether or not they even feel sorry. You owe me whether or not you feel sorry or not. And I think I think that is the issue for me. And I think in order for us to get serious about it, in order for to get anyone else serious about it, we have to get serious too, and we have to stop getting excited over symbolism. To me, that's central to the problem. Because why are we excited? He just said he's sorry for something. Like, how does that help you? How does that help your family? How does that help your life? So I think for me, I think we have to get serious, and I think we also have to stop being fatalists. I hear a lot of people say, "Well, they're never going to give us anything." Well, I'm sure that there were people, doing slavery who was like, "They're never going to let us free." They look at us like animals. I mean, whether or not it happens, I think you still have a responsibility to fight the good fight.
Well, I agree with you, and I'll just say this, and let you get the last word. Um, I think that when you talk about that quest for getting others to see our humanity and to see us as human beings, because remember, the whole racial divide was created. It was artificially created in the 1500s, as Professor Aaron Johnson talks about. It was artificially created in the 1500s to give them an excuse to dehumanize us, right? So, in our quest to get others to understand that we are human and to demand that humanity, we have to first see ourselves as human. We have to get to a point where we know that our suffering is just as relevant as everybody else's suffering. When it comes to the Holocaust, and people say never forget, Okay, I won't forget it. But when it comes to the suffering of my people, I want a full accounting of all the different atrocities that have occurred. I mean, people will mention things like Black Wall Street, what happened at Rosewood, a few symbolic lynchings, what happened to Emmett Till, us being fed to alligators as alligator our babies back in the day, things like that. But I think that what's really problematic about our history and our denial of it is that most of the bodies are buried in all these stories that will never be told. These stories that we're going to have to keep digging up. So I think that we have to really go back and do a reaccounting of the last 300 years in this nation and find out all these things that actually occurred so that we can give proper respect to our ancestors and our communities and really, really engage in a true healing process. Now, in terms of, one thing that people have said is that, well, in the Nazi Holocaust, there are actual survivors that are alive and they went through it, so that's why they're getting money. And, slaves, no slaves are still alive. Okay, I don't agree with that. I think that that's ridiculous. But if you want to look at that or take that approach, you look at mass incarceration. There are tens of millions of survivors of the mass incarceration Holocaust in America that deserve reparations for what's happened to their families. I personally know at least 10 families where the children grew up without a father because he was given a 40, 50-year prison sentence when they were 2 years old. So those individuals deserve reparations just like descendants of slaves do. The United States has a whole lot of accounting to do, and the fact of the matter is that I don't know if they can ever actually afford to make everything right, but I think at the very least we as black people should care about ourselves enough and care about each other enough to say, no, you want me to come to your Martin Luther King dinner, hold hands with you, sing Kumbaya, and we shall overcome, and act like the past is just the past. I'm not going to do that because you've refused to acknowledge what you've done to me and my people. And until you do that, we ain't got nothing to talk about.
Well, I think I think you make a very good point about the full accounting. I think it was the Equal Justice Institute, I believe, that published a report on lynching. And I did an article about it in Counterpunch. And what they found was that lynchings were much more widespread than had been previously reported. And what they found is that these weren't just cases where there was perceived to have been some rape or something like that. You had one case where there was like four brothers who were all black business owners who were squirrel hunting and who were just massacred or disappeared off for the heck of it. You had people in the, what was it, the Colored Farmers Alliance or the Black Farmers Alliance who were trying to, sort of unionize and trying to get a fair wage and trying to build bridges with white farmers, and were disappeared off. So what you find is that each time, black people start trying to build wealth, whether they tried to build wealth with unions or whether they're trying to build wealth with their own businesses, there's a lot of jealousy that rises up and kind of cuts it down as well. And so that's always curious to me when I hear people say, "Oh, black people should just do better and start things." We've been starting things for a long time, and you've been very effective at shutting them down for a long time. And there has to be a dollar price associated with that. There has to be a price associated with that, because if there's no price associated with that, people believe they can continue to do it. People believe, there's a reason. The reason why people believe, in some part, why they can just abuse black people and get away with it is because nothing really happens. If a black person kills a white person, there was a study about black people killing white people. I think it was in Georgia. And how they're treated, and how they, the book is thrown at them, and blah 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 blah. But not the same thing if they kill another black person. So it is that sort of thing in terms of a black life never meaning much in this country that is so problematic. And I think we're actually going into a place where there's a lot of life that's not going to mean a lot in this country in terms of how police are behaving right now, because it's becoming you're seeing more white people like get gunned down and things like that. But like we always say, we're always the canary in the coal mine. It always happens to us first, but you never listen. But this is just something that's owed to us. You can't tell me now that race doesn't matter, because it mattered a lot when people were enslaved, and when you concocted this idea of race, that you concocted this idea that skin color and hair texture actually meant something, and it meant that we had small brains and could be, and could be used as slaves and put out in the fields to work for nothing. So it meant something then. So you have to pay for what it meant. You can't say now, well, we're all post color. We don't see color anymore. This is a post racial America. You can't say that now. It's too late. So that's my position. Pay up. There's a debt that's owed. Pay the debt, and let's see if we can move forward from there. At least start paying the debt. And like I said, you could start. There are a number of ways that you could start paying that debt. You know, there's a bill in Congress right now that probably won't ever get anywhere, which would investigate ways to apply reparations for black people. So you won't even study it? You're telling me that you won't even study, you won't even pass this bill so we could study ways to do it? That means you just don't want to do it. It's not about, well, we can't, it's not possible. You don't even want to know if it's possible because you know you don't want to give black people a dime, or you don't want to give them a tax credit to where their kids could, get an education, for close to free or something like that. You don't want to do it.
Well, the fact is that you can't call yourself post-racial when you've got all these racial disparities that exist because you've been so very racial for so long, right? It's like me stabbing you in the stomach and saying, well, your body's in a post-trauma stage or in a post-attack stage or whatever, but you're still bleeding from the fact that I've attacked you. So you're not post anything.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll be post trauma after I've healed you and paid you money for what I did and maybe spend some prison time or whatever. But the fact is that if you don't make things right, then things won't be right. They're not going to be right because you won't do it again, and they're not going to be right because you ignore it. So thank you very much, Yvette.
Not a
I
problem.
really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about this. All right, everybody, this is Miss Yvette Carnell, my partner in crime, my homegirl. She is at breakingbrown.com. Go to breakingbrown.com and check out her work. Her blog is one of the best blogs on the entire internet. You won't find anything like it anywhere else, and it's true. I'm not just talking. I'm serious. You're just in a zone by yourself, and people see that your blog is growing. I mean, you've had millions of reads, I know, but I mean, you get what, a few 100,000.
We get a few hundred thousand. We had a few hundred thousand one month. We actually had close to 1 million. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's independent, and it's it's you and a few other writers that pop in, and it's just real stuff. So it's the place for intelligent, thoughtful Black people. So I encourage everybody to take a look and visit. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated, and do never ever apologize for being Black. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.